On today's show, with the Capitals shutting out the Bruins, all they have to do is take down the Flyers and they'll be playoff bound. Do they have what it takes? I'll discuss next on this edition of Locked On Capitals.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals. I'm so glad you decided to join me today. As always, this podcast is free and available on all the major platforms, including the SiriusXM app and on YouTube. And I want to thank you for making this your first listen each and every day. My name is Dan Holme. You can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. And the best way that you can help grow the show is to subscribe to Locked On Capitals on YouTube and comment anything down below. I would love to talk Capitals hockey with you one-on-one, and we can do that on subtext. Just check the show description for more details. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started so the Capitals do it. Improbable, not impossible. They found a way to pick up a huge win over the Boston Bruins, shutting them out and picking up two huge wins in a row against teams that on paper are markedly better than them. This team has another gear, and I ultimately do think that they do have what it takes to take down the Flyers and march into the playoffs. We'll talk about that a little bit later. We will talk about how Charlie Lindgren was dialed in and ultimately is one of the biggest reasons why the Capitals are in the position that they're in right now. And then to close out the show, we will talk about the huge game, the final game of the regular season against the Flyers. But just to get it going here, huge. I cannot believe that they found a way to get it done. And this team has another gear when it comes to the playoffs, because if you take a look at it, the Capitals' blue line is greatly depleted, and they found a way to not only win the game, but to shut out the Boston Bruins, a team that sits in first place in the Atlantic. And you take a look at the Capitals, who are kind of teetering in and out of it. Quite a statement win for the Capitals tonight. So to all the doubters out there that say the Capitals cannot do it, they picked up two huge wins against two teams that on paper are much, much better than they are. So a big positive momentum snowball is rolling. And I think that the Capitals being dialed in, I think that anything is possible. But not to get ahead of ourselves here, and I'll talk about this in the last segment, the Capitals need to keep applying pressure, and they have to keep the same mentality that they had tonight and apply that against a Flyers team that would love nothing more than to hand the Capitals a loss. But the game tonight, dialed in, Charlie Lindgren was huge. The Capitals found that playoff gear tonight, a game they absolutely had to win. They did just that by blanking the first place Bruins first in the Atlantic. Charlie Lindgren was absolutely huge, and all it took was a goal by John Carlson from that blue line and a late goal by Nic Dowd to cement the Capitals' win. This game had huge implications in the regard that if they lost, they would have most assuredly been out of the playoff picture. And that's kind of what I've talked about. And if you're an everyday of the show, you know I've spoke of it, that there's been ups, there's been downs, but this Capitals team has never been down and out. They've always found a way to rise above. And I think that this is speaking volumes of a team that didn't go out and make any flashy moves at the trade deadline. They didn't sign any big sexy names that were available. This was a team that pushed all their chips in on this team, and they're proving Brian McClellan right. I mean, not long ago, I was questioning his judgment. I still, to a certain extent, am, but the Capitals are playing playoff hockey right now. Here's the big thing. John Carlson, who has been absolutely clutch for the Capitals as of late, was no exception tonight. John Carlson broke the record for most goals by a Capitals blue liner on Saturday, and he kept that positive mojo going Monday night in the district. Carlson found Twine in the first period for his 10th goal of the season and 4th point in 3 games. This is now Dowd's 6th consecutive season scoring double-digit goals. And, we know what John Carlson means to this team. A huge player on this team, a minute monster, and one of the players that can answer the call on the biggest stage. One, it really means the most. That is why you have the veterans around like John Carlson and Alex Ovechkin and the guys that know how to play playoff hockey. There might be some young and fancy toys around the NHL, but none of them are proven commodities, or a lot of them aren't proven commodities in the playoff picture. That is something that's not easily quantifiable. The Capitals and their veteran-laden core with a mixture of young talent is the making of a perfect recipe. Getting shots on goal is something the Capitals have struggled with this season, but they sure found it tonight. The Caps finished the night leading 25-16 in shots on goal. The Capitals understood the gravity of this game, and they found a way to answer the bell when they had to. That is one of the things that I love about this team, is understanding that the gravity of the situation. And to be fair, there have been quite a few games this season that were must-win games that the Capitals lost, but that's all in the rear viewer. That's all in the past. I'm talking about the present, the right here, right now, that the Capitals are riding high. Can they do it? That is the big question. Can they find a way to take down the Flyers and pull a true rabbit out of their hat? But that was a big thing. Nic Dowd sealed the Capitals with an empty netter that was the final dagger for a really good Bruins team. It's an interesting thing for me. The Capitals found a way to lose a game against the Bruins, a team that on paper is much worse than the Boston Bruins are. And, if you take a look at the standings, that's also the case. How is it that the Capitals can find a way to answer the call on the big stage? It's like another gear on your transmission. It's like driving down the highway and all of a sudden, whoa, I didn't know I had turbo. The Capitals found the turbo button, and it was a huge thing for the Caps. Tom Wilson picked up an assist to extend his point streak to 3 games and also led with 6 hits. The physical game, that is one of the things I spoke about in the last podcast, was the Capitals always play that much better when they're playing a physical game. Tom Wilson engaged. That was huge. Dylan Strome picked up an assist for his 4th point in 5 games and added to his single-season career high in points. He leads the Caps with 67 points this season. Another guy that puts on the Superman cape from time to time. When Alex Ovechkin got off to his slowest start, goal-scoring wise in his entire career, Dylan Strome took that bull by the horns and led this team in goals for a good chunk of the season. Dylan Strome has been money, and is the tough question that I don't know if the Capitals can answer. They found a way to do it. I don't want to think about it too much. I just want to be happy in the regard of knowing that they got it done, and hopefully they can continue riding this positive momentum. If this was one of the games that you weren't that into, then maybe you want to check your pulse. You probably don't have one. This was a game for Capitals fans to be pumping their fist and getting super hyped about this team this year. Quite something. Sonny Milano, Mr. Clutch himself, had a game-saving block late in the second half of the final period, getting it done. Sonny Milano is that guy with great hand-eye coordination, that one where he was kind of bouncing it hacky sack style off his blade and then shot it in, a handful of games ago. That is what we love about Sonny Milano. Another guy that answered the bell, game-saving block. That's what it's all about. You remembered in the last game, Alex Ovechkin kind of laid out and made a big save. The captain of the Capitals laid out and blocked a shot. That this is a team that is playing kind of Dale Hunter hockey, that's laying out in front of pucks and making big saves. Big takeaways from this game is it was a team that understood the situation. And there was an interview with TJ Oshie earlier in the afternoon saying that, we're not afraid of this. This is what we come to play to do, to play in games of this situation. And it was guys like TJ Oshie that got it done, and John Carlson and Nic Dowd and Charlie Lindgren make no mistake about it, why the Capitals are in the position that they're in right now. All right, so coming up here, we will talk about how Charlie Lindgren was dialed in and was a brick wall in net. Nothing is getting past Charlie. How does he continue to keep getting it done? I'll discuss straight ahead. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to get in on the game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. It's Locked On NFL's mock draft live on April 17th at 7 Eastern, streaming on the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Find the ultimate 6-episode series on April 17th at 7 Eastern to hear who the local experts of Locked On are picking for every NFL franchise. With live reactions from local college experts and even the fantasy football angle, the Locked On NFL mock draft on April 17th at 7 Eastern. Streaming live on Locked On Sports 24/7 streaming channel or on YouTube. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So Charlie Lindgren is the guy that has saved the Capitals bacon on quite a few nights. And tonight was no exception, as he was that brick wall in net that kept the Capitals in this game. But to be all fair here, and an accurate assessor of the game, the Capitals defense stepped up and played huge. And they did that minus some big players. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. But Charlie Lindgren, let's remember who he is. He was the guy that was the #2 netminder to start the season. And Darcy Kuemper has some of his worst numbers in his entire career. And Charlie Lindgren, the guy that was huge last season in December, has been huge for the Capitals all of this season. And tonight was no exception. Charlie Lindgren was a wall in net again. There was questions earlier in the year about who's the #1 in net for the Capitals. Lindgren has been an absolute game changer for the Caps, and I have no doubt if it wasn't for Lindgren, the Caps would have no postseason plans. You saw how Kuemper has played, and if they didn't have someone like Charlie Lindgren, I honestly believe the Capitals would have no plans for the playoffs. Charlie Lindgren has took on most of the load for the Caps in net this season, and they needed him again tonight. Tonight was Lindgren's 6th shutout of the season, saving 16 of 16. Lindgren was sharp and moved well in the crease and made some saves that, frankly, Darcy Kuemper would not have made. So it's a good thing the Capitals did hold on to him. I've gone back and forth about what was the right decision to make. You know, some nights the Capitals played poorly and Charlie Lindgren wasn't enough. And it's a game-by-game basis. Let's be honest about it, that Charlie Lindgren was huge. The Capitals played huge around him. And it was a game that, for a line's share of the game, was 1-0. If it wasn't for the defense stepping up, even though it was greatly depleted, there could have been some goals that got past Charlie Lindgren. So not to diminish the evening that Charlie Lindgren had, but this was a team collectively that played much better than they have in the past. The defense needed to play big in the absence of Rasmus Sandin and Nick Jensen. Alex Alexiev, Trevor Van Riemsdyk, and Martin Farivari took on a bulk of the load and did a stand-up job logging heavy minutes and helping Charlie Lindgren win this game. So quite a huge evening for Charlie Lindgren and the Capitals as they found a way to get it done. Carlson stepped up and was a minute master that we know he can be, playing 25 minutes in the game, or a little over 25 minutes. The Caps had to make some call-ups with the injury, and Vincent Iorio and Dylan McIlrath were up to the challenge and didn't look out of place. Dylan McIlrath was a guy, the captain of the Hershey Bears, a guy that knows how to play games on the big stage. You saw how big he was in the Hershey Bears in their victory and winning the Calder Cup last season. And Vincent Iorio, a guy that stepped up and played huge and had to take on a bigger role with some big pieces missing from this team. The Caps, who have been big on the injury bug as of late, Beck Malenstein was also bit by the injury bug as well. Malenstein took a hit from the Trent Frederick. He left in apparent pain and headed to seek medical attention by the Caps medical staff. It is a bug that is buzzing around the Capitals as of late. That another injured Capital in the form of Beck Malenstein this time. So he is a guy that takes on a huge role for the Capitals. He is a guy that lays his body out. He is a physical player. He is a guy that is not afraid of dropping the gloves. We hope that ultimately he will be good to go tomorrow night versus the Flyers, as we need all hands on deck. Charlie Lindgren was the guy that kept it in it, but it wasn't just Charlie. It was the supporting cast around Chucky that got it done. Like I talked about earlier, you can have the greatest goaltender in the world, but if your team can't score goals, let's remember that the Capitals only had one goal for a good chunk of the season. Listen, I know that Swayman's a good goalie. I get that. But that it was huge that the Capitals had someone like Charlie Lindgren and the blue line to play clutch when they needed to. So that is the big takeaway from this. The Capitals hope they can win tomorrow and they're in the playoffs, something that seemed improbable, but that wasn't impossible. So the Capitals finding a way to get it done when there was a lot of doubt earlier in the season. And as of late, you take a look at it on that Western Coast road trip, they played so well, and then they kind of fell on their face, dropping a bunch of games in the row that people are like, was that fool's gold? Was that a mirage? Who is this Capitals team anyway? They are finding their gear, and they're finding their mojo towards the tail end of the season. The big question is, there's one game left. One game left. All they have to do is win. Get that? All they have to do. Can they do it? I think that they can. They're going to need Charlie Lindgren, of course, back between the pipes, and they're going to need the defense to play the way that it did tonight. And one of the things I would say is they shouldn't spend too much time patting themselves on the back. They should take it for what it is, probably hit the hay in a hurry, get some sleep, and be ready for tomorrow. If it was Spencer Carberry, I wouldn't tinker with the lineup too much, as the Capitals were dialed in and played some great hockey tonight. We hope they can keep it rolling. All right, so coming up here straight ahead, we will talk about how tomorrow is huge for the Capitals. Winner takes all. Can the Caps do it and make it to the playoffs, defying what a lot of the insiders thought earlier in the season? I'll discuss coming up. Regardless of where we are in the current standings, I want to remind you that you could win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our #1 choice for daily fantasy sports and especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. Again, sometimes you're watching these games, you're not that into it. Say it's a Capitals game, say it's a Nationals game, and you want to get in on the action. Open up the Sleeper app and start playing fantasy sports. I honestly think that you guys will love it. To win a 100 times bet on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. You heard me, Capitals fans. You can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. So start paying attention and nail your picks so you can start winning big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So tomorrow or today, depends on when you're listening and or watching this, the Capitals need to answer the bell one more time. It will be a huge game, the biggest of the season. Can the Capitals take down the Flyers and march into victory lane and make it into the playoffs? There is a lot at stake, and we take a look at the scores from tonight. A lot of the teams that were kind of making it interesting for the Capitals won. The Penguins 4-2 over the Predators. The Islanders 4-1 over the Devils. A tough thing for the Capitals, as you know, they're trying to do what they can do, and if they win tomorrow, of course, it will be that much easier for them. I honestly do believe that they do have what it takes, and if you doubted it, take a look at the last 2 games in here in particular. To be honest here, you could also say that, I hate to say it, they could lose, because we have seen how they've played here recently. I don't want it to go down that negative tributary right now. I want to assume that they're going to be able to keep rolling with this positive momentum. What we saw tonight was a Capitals team that can answer the bell against a really, really great NHL team. The Bruins, who are in first place in the Atlantic, is no joke. They got it done, and they got it done with a depleted blue line. There were players that needed to step up and play a bigger role. You take a look at Jensen out. You take a look at Rasmus Sandin out of the mix. The Capitals needed someone to save the day. And when you took a look at the blue line, kind of inexperienced, not as much NHL experience as you would normally see out there. I know that Dylan McElrath is a guy that has played in the NHL before, but you take a look at Vinny Iorio, not a ton of NHL experience. So it would have been an easy assumption to make that the Capitals might lose this game because the blue line is weak because, they're missing Jensen and they're missing Sandin, but it wasn't the case. That's all just that negative switch that you need to turn off in your head. They got it done. At the end of the day, the people that said the Capitals are going to be done, just wait, are the people that want to wallow around in the mud of negativity. They could lose tomorrow, but for me, right now, I'm going to choose to live in the right here, right now, and the Capitals did the improbable by picking up a huge victory, and I hope the Capitals can keep it moving forward. Talking about it, Spencer Carberry said they'll discuss tonight the goalie plan for tomorrow and whether Charlie Lindgren will start versus the Flyers, but noted he didn't have a heavy workload tonight. So could you think of a crazier scenario, a game that means the absolute most if they put Darcy Kemper in the net? The only reason you would even think about that is if Charlie Lindgren was injured. And even if Charlie Lindgren was injured, I would rather go with Hunter Shepard or Clay Stevenson over Darcy Kemper. I know that in his last game that he played much better than he did, but a game of absolute huge implications. We need Charlie. I don't think there's a conversation here. Even if he had a heavy workload, I would rather have a Charlie Lindgren in net who had faced a heavy workload from the night before than Darcy Kemper. I'm sorry, Darcy. I really hope you can find your game next season. But as far as this season is concerned, we want the sure thing or the next to sure thing, and that is Charlie Lindgren in net. I think that Charlie is up for the task. I really do believe it. Lindgren talked like he's ready to play tomorrow and said this morning he was prepared to do so. Anything else would be absolutely unacceptable. Beck Mallenstein, who left tonight's game with an upper body injury, will travel with the Capitals to Philadelphia, and Spencer Carberry said they will assess tomorrow whether he can play. Again, we're hoping that he can. A guy that came onto the scene, spent many years in the American Hockey League, has a physical presence, will do whatever it takes to get a jersey on a night in and night out basis. Huge for the team. This team plays better with Beck Mallenstein in the lineup. Make no mistake about it. But just to wrap it up here, what an evening for the Capitals to get it done. Just knee-jerk reaction. If you would have asked me earlier in the day, do you think they'll be able to take down the Bruins? Would have had to think about it for a little bit. And ultimately, I thought, even myself, who am trying to stay positive, that the Bruins are really good and the Capitals have kind of teetered here. That wheel has started to wobble. Could they do it? That I would have questioned it. I don't know if I would have given a definitive answer one way or the other. I would have kind of leaned towards them losing, but they did it. And even me, that negative switch needs to get turned off in my head and just buy all in, drink the Capitals Kool-Aid. And if they lose tomorrow, it's over. And let's not let it ruin our days. Obviously, we would hope that they would win, but if they don't, that's what it's all about. It's on to preparing for next season. But as of right now, let's not even talk about them losing. Let's talk about a huge team victory tonight, a big win the night before the last game against the Lightning, that this team can do it. They can pull together and win games against teams that on paper are much better than them. I think they can do it. I know the Flyers will throw the kitchen sink at the Capitals, but I ultimately do believe they can do it. Listen, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, your only daily year-round podcast covering the Washington Capitals. And I want to thank all of you that listen on the audio side and watch this on YouTube. You are ultimately what makes this show successful. When you're done here, head on over to Locked On's 24/7 streaming channel, available on the free Amazon Fire TV's channel app and on YouTube. All right, once again, I want to thank you all for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals. Let's go, Caps. Let's hope they can win tomorrow night. Let's get her done. I'll talk to you again next time.